Okay, record. Start.
Your name is?
Okay.
Your name is?
My name is Cathy Kruyff Murfitt. Today is November 8th, 2016, and we are recording for the Historical Society of Breezy Point,
New York. When did you first come down here?
My parents had the house before I was born. They were here in 1943. I just came across some of the papers.
Oh, okay.
So we had 68 Bedford at the time, and until I was 4 years old, we were only summer residents. And then when I turned 4, we were here all year round.
How many generations have lived here?
No, actually, you consider it for my parents. Actually, my grandfather had the house first.
Right.
And then he sold it to my father. And then I had my own house down here on Bedford Avenue. I had 30 Bedford when my kids were growing up. My kids grew up here. And then my daughter, after my father passed and I moved back in with my mother, my daughter took my house at 30 Bedford and was there for 7 years with her children. So I guess you'd consider that 4 generations.
Okay. Do any of them still live here?
No. The only one I have here now, I have a cousin that lives around the corner on Bedford.
Okay. What kept you here?
I liked the fact that it was a safe place to raise my children, that I could allow them out any time of day or night by themselves and not have to worry. It was, first of all, just being at the beach. I grew up here, and that's in my blood, to be able to smell the salt water every day. But when we were kids, it was so safe because they only had one main road and a few parking lots. So as long as, now of course there's streets everywhere you can drive up to your homes, but you didn't have that when we were growing up. There were just parking lots, and it was so safe, and you didn't have to worry about your children.
Sure. What difficulties did you deal with, like schools?
Well, I started out school at PS 114, and I transferred to St. Francis de Sales in the 4th grade. And then I went to Far Rockaway High School. And my big problem was the transportation for school, because if we had to do a project, I could not get to the library from school. School got out at 3 o'clock, and in the wintertime, the sun was down by 5, and we had to hitchhike. So it would have to go to the library, take a bus back home, hitchhike at night in the dark and the cold. Right. So that was our difficulty.
Okay, stores and shopping.
When I was a kid, my parents would go shopping every Friday night. It was like their date night. And my brother Frankie and I would be sitting at home watching television, and Dad would call from a payphones in those days. And Dad would call and say, "We're leaving A&P now. Meet us at the parking lot." We had to park by the Longshore Beach Club. Meet us at the circle of the beach club, and with the wagon. So cold or not, we were sitting there nice and warm in the house, watching television, and had to put on our coats and go over and get the wagon every shop for all the grocery shopping. In those days, we had a gas refrigerator. I think I'm the only person I know of who knew what a gas refrigerator was. So that when the electricity went off, and living down here, the electricity went off all the time. Yeah. Yeah. If somebody hit a pole out in Rockaway, the electricity went off all over Breezy Point, you know.
Yes. Okay,
so
I'm sorry.
It worked out.
Shopping in Rockaway, 116th Street?
No. Because my grandparents still lived in Brooklyn in Park Slope.
Oh,
so
okay.
My parents would shop. My father worked also in Park Slope, so they would shop Friday night at the A&P on Flatbush Avenue.
Okay. Did you join any organizations when you were a kid down here, or your family?
Oh yes. organizations were how people got along down here, particularly in the wintertime. You didn't have any other entertainment. So my mother was in the Rosary Society and my father was in the Holy Name. And my father and mother both were in the fire department. My father drove the ambulance, but he was also a first aider. This is how you got along, because there were only like 500 families from the bridge to the tip. And you needed each other. So the church would have Friday nights after they built the church hall. Church hall was built around 1954.
Right.
And after they built the church hall, they would allow the teenagers in on Friday nights, and the grade school kids, the boys for 2 hours on Saturday, and the girls 2 hours on Saturday. And that was our entertainment. There was really nothing else down here in the winter.
Right.
But in the wintertime, the fire department would, right behind the firehouse where where 12th Avenue is now, the fire department used to flood the area and made an ice skating rink, and we'd bring milk crates to sit on to change into our skates, and we go skating behind the firehouse every year, and they would maintain it for us as long as it was cold enough to be frozen.
Okay, do you remember in the wintertime, because the stores that we did have, the grocery store and all, was closed, but we did have Dugan and we had crew that came in with the trucks.
Oh yes, Alan Plant's father was one of the deliverers for yes.
Oh, okay.
And I remember all the houses that had the deliveries, they'd have these little boxes out there now. Nowadays you look outside a door and you have a little box that's outside a medical center, and that's where they're going to come and pick up the blood or the urine samples or whatever. But in those days your milk containers were delivered there, and they had little cardboard tops to them. The glass bottles with the cardboard tops.
Right. Okay. What did you really do for entertainment, like more so in the wintertime?
Well, we had bicycles. We rode bicycles everywhere, up and down the blocks. Once September 1st came and everybody, after the Mardi Gras, I was like queen of the world. I could ride my bicycle up and down because we weren't allowed to ride on the sidewalks in the summer.
Right.
And bicycles were it. You'd always have a best friend that you'd go and you'd study with, or, you know, I had Eileen Ehlers or Tony Rabick or Laura Lee DeLisi, Judy Johnson. You'd always have a friend that you'd be playing in their house or they'd play in your house. And we had Girl Scouts. There were Girl Scouts in Roxbury. We would have that one night a week. That was Thursday nights. Wednesday we had choir. Father Henry Lang was the choir master, and we'd have choir every Wednesday. And the church would put on pageants. My brother was the star of two of them. One of them was the boy that sang for the king. That's the one I remember in particular. But we used to have a Christmas pageant every year. Oh. We'd go to whatever the churches, because the churches, again, the churches or the fire department were the hub of the winter entertainment. So Christ Community Church would have card night, and they had a back room where the children would play bunco or
ping pong.
No, we played bunco at the okay. We were playing on the card night. Our parents would be out playing canasta or canasta or bridge. Then you'd have the Rosary Society would have a Chinese auction. You made sure you went to everything, because that's where you met up with your friends and got the latest news. And
okay, we had block parties, and now we're going back to the summer. Mardi Gras block parties. Bazaars.
Oh, the bazaars were wonderful. People just...
So you get your glasses for the whole summer.
Right.
Every weekend.
Right. You had a bazaar that was run by the Square Club. You had a bazaar that was run by the Catholic Club, one by the Antlers Club, and one by the Firehouse.
Right.
And my father was always known because he was the guy who did the over and under, and the kids would make, all year long, they'd turn around, they'd see Walter de Kruyff and they'd say, over, under, because he would yell it out, so it became a thing that they looked forward to. The bazaars were just exciting. There was something to do at night. You know, when we did have, like Tuesday nights, we had fireworks. If you walk down the Bayside, you'd see the fireworks that emanated from Coney Island.
And then Wednesday night, you could see them from Playland in Rockaway.
Right.
That's okay.
Well, as I grew up, when later years, my teen years, I dated a guy from Rockaway, so I would go out there and see them at Playland.
Okay.
But we had all the bazaars. We had the Mardi Gras. Everybody had block parties. I mean, I've got pictures of I can remember my mother making costumes for us out of crepe paper.
Right.
And I don't see that done today. But you could buy sheets of crepe paper, and my mother was sewing everything, so she was very good at it. But when we lived on Bedford Avenue, we had block parties every year. Right. And then we moved up in 1953 to Graham Place, and we had a couple of block parties there. I think the last one on Graham was around 1959. And
yeah, I remember one time too, we decorated our house with crepe paper for Mardi Gras, and it rained that night.
Mm-hmm. And it ran. Any sign of moisture, the crepe paper would stick to the house, and the color would run.
Okay. So how did you deal with the elements like snowstorms and hurricanes in the wintertime?
The hurricanes, we never left our house. My mother refused to leave the house. When Fort Tilda was still active, they would come around the amphibious ducks down Graham Place, and they'd knock on the door and say, "We'll take you out." And my mother would say, "No, I'm staying here with my children." The houses in those days, any house that was raised up to a 4-foot level. And 4-foot level was the highest. We had floor heaters, and as a child I could put my finger in the grate of the floor heater and feel the ocean, but it never ever came into the house until Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy. Right. And in the wintertime, my brother Frankie was the only boy on the block, the only young male. There were two, and Mrs. Cahill had 2 boys, but they were like working age. So my brother was the only one in the neighborhood, and he had to dig a path every snowstorm all by himself. My father wouldn't let me because I was a girl. But my brother had to dig a path all the way from our house all the way over to to Reed Avenue, then down Reed Avenue, and then over to the Longshore Beach Club, so we could get the only boy, and it had to be as wide as a path that you could walk in.
With a wagon.
Exactly. You couldn't. We're community of little red wagons. We couldn't do without them.
No. Are you still in touch with any of your playmates or pals that you sort of grew up with?
Oh yes, but only through Facebook. God bless Facebook. I mean, they don't live down here anymore, any of them. But some of the ones I went to school. Cathy Doherty. Cathy Doherty lives on Arcadia Walk, and we went to St. Francis de Sales together. And her grandfather was Mr. D'Amato, and her grandfather built the first road into Rockaway Point. So, and we passed D'Amato's dump every day.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, definitely.
Wow. You bring back memories?
Oh yes. I go for a walk here, and I say, "This is where so and so fell and broke her arm." Or this is living here. I could do this blindfolded to get home, but you go past, and all of these memories flood in.
Right.
Just when you talk to somebody, you start remembering.
Right.
That's it.
Can you remember any building or organizations that no longer exist?
Yes. The Longshore Beach Club was over on the other side of Reed Avenue. They had the handball courts belonged to them,
Right.
and a tennis court there, and they had a playground there and the locker area. That was one, and then we had the ice house. Used to be down where East Market Street is, where the road now goes down toward the yacht club. It was right there at that corner. And on the other side of the street was Clint's gas station, Clint Tyrell, which later was bought by Al Lavoie. But when I was a kid, Al Lavoie was working for Clint, and all these years later, I mean, he's 80 years old now, and I keep reminding him, he used to fix my bicycles. He would help me so much with my... Oh, yes, and there were organizations. We don't have the Square Club anymore. That
No.
the building that's here was turned into the Tri-Tot.
Right.
Antlers.
The Antlers Club is gone now. That's where they have the activity center.
Right.
The bazaars are all gone. Well, the Colony Inn is gone.
Yes.
The Colony Theater is gone. The Colony Inn, we used to go down there. They'd have fireman's night once a year, and every member of the fire department had to bake cakes. Well, my mother baked 4 every year because they were raffled off, and that's how they earned money. So my mother would bake 4 cakes, and Frankie and I would take one in each hand and have to walk from Graham Place down to the Bayside, and be careful you don't drop that cake or touch it, or you ruin the icing. But that was, they'd have firemen's nights. That was how they earned money to run the fire department.
And also the following week, they always had the barn dance, which was run by Bill Niebling. And he had live animals that he raffled off. I used to help him, so I got the first ticket all the time.
Remember they had the rings and then you go into jail?
Oh yes, at the dances, yes.
Right.
And in order to get you into jail, they would do silly things. This was our entertainment. We knew each other, we liked each other, we danced with each other, we interacted, and we laughed. People call this place a place of a lot of booze. It's a lot of love, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of laughter, and that's all you have. So when you'd go to one of these dances and they'd say, okay, you're going to be put in jail because you held a cigarette in your right hand instead of your left hand, or vice versa. You go to jail and somebody had to pay to get you out, and that was how they raised money. But it was a lot of fun.
And we had the Miss Rockaway Point contest.
Absolutely. The Miss Rockaway Point contest. There were a lot of contests down here. When my daughter was little, she was about 1.5 years, 2 years old, and I put her in the children's contest in Roxbury. Later years, when I was a teenager, they started the Miss Aloha Teen Queen, which was Austin Leave Our Homes Alone. So any kind of news that they could get out, any kind of public relations, they started that then. And they'd have the full court and all these pretty people, and they'd have teen dances. They'd raise money that way, and that's how we spent our summers.
What was I going to say?
It was
We had a bowling alley.
Yes, there was a bowling alley. That, and when you talk to anybody around our age, all the guys will say, I worked there, I had to set the pins.
Yes, right.
That was run by Ray Shawnee's uncle. And it was by Kennedy's to the west side of Kennedy's was an outdoor bowling alley. And the kids all stood there and made their money by setting the pins. Right.
It was fun. It was fun growing up here.
Absolutely.
Okay, we had a lot of things that kids could do. I mean, we had the kids with the big carts that went with shoemaker, laundry, and
Well, that's it. Yes, that was part of the entrepreneurship around here.
right.
The stores would send around. You had a number of people who came around. Everybody remembers Taylor, Shoemaker, but the children wake up in the morning and they would hear paper.
Yes.
Or on Fridays it'd be Rockaway, Point News.
And there was another one, ding dong.
Right.
Ding dong.
The umbrella man, he would sharpen your knives. He came over on the ferry. He'd come over from Sheepshead Bay on the ferry, and he'd go up and down the lanes, and he had a strap that would hold his grinding wheel, and it worked with a pedal like an old-fashioned sewing machine. And he would sharpen the knives, or he would fix your umbrellas. And that was, that would came like every 2 weeks, but he'd ring a bell going up and down the lane, so now.
Ding dong.
And he would take his nap on the worry bench, right opposite the Potter's. Okay.
Oh, Cotters. Everybody remembers Cotters.
Everybody
Right.
remembers Cotters.
By the time, before I was tall enough to even get my nose to the first counter, it would be, the bottom row was 2 for a penny, and the next row was a penny. And then you'd go up, in those days, chocolate bars that they now charge like a 90 cents to anywhere between 90 cents and $1.25, they were a nickel.
Yes. Right.
And then they had that case that you opened up. That opened up to the top. It had glass on the top, and there would be the little button candies. These are candies that they sell in the stores now, and you look and say, oh, I remember those.
Yes. Yeah.
We gave him a little paper bag, and we'd fill it up, and then we poured on. Mrs. Carter would count it.
Right?
Yeah.
And Longshore Beach Club was called the Barrel Beach because we had barrels out there that you could hold on to.
Right. You could go out further than you should, but
Yeah.
because you could hold a rope going all the way out.
Right.
And all the way, it was out a square. Now the co-op has got one like that down the Bayside, but in those days it was the Longshore Beach Club that had the Barrel Beach, and you could swim and hold on and be safe and be careful. But I do remember Richie Wilmoth had, every year he made a homemade empty oil barrels and put a wood deck on top.
Yeah.
And he would float it out behind his house every summer, and that was where I loved to spend my summers.
We had one on the Bayside.
Right,
Yeah.
on the Bayside
Yeah,
behind his house.
That's where
Yes.
I swim out to.
That was where I met my husband.
Okay.
I was 13, he was 15.
Wow. Okay, if you needed money, you would go down by Law's candy store on the
Old
Bayfront,
Man Law.
and you would go underneath and find coins that went underneath the boardwalk
We used to go
by the drugstore.
by the drugstore. Anywhere after the grocery store, you buy a chewing gum, double bubble chewing
And
gum,
a straw.
and a straw or a popsicle stick if you could find one, and chew it up, put it on there, and then go down between the cracks and find a dime or a nickel, or you were rich.
Yes.
You were rich doing that. Occasionally you'd find some kids down there, they'd come down with a bucket of water, and they'd put a jigger inside the bucket of water. And it was like a shill game, really, because it was a nickel to try, and you had to put a nickel and drop it, and if you dropped it into the jigger, then you would get money back, like 2 to 1. That's how us kids gambled. We gambled. Yes, you had the worry bench.
Yeah. We also had a dance teacher on Atlantic Walk. Her name was
Sylvia.
Sylvia.
So,
And she had recitals in the colony once during the summer.
right. She loved my sister because my sister was an acrobat.
Oh. Okay.
So she would have my sister do several numbers, and you'd have the dance recital down the colony, and it was, again, these are the things that you went to. They would have, Honey O'Farrell would have at the Catholic Club different fundraisers, but this was where you got your entertainment. People would get up and have a show. One night they'd have a German night, they'd have an Italian night, they'd have an Irish night.
Wednesday nights was beer barrel poker night.
Right. Absolutely. And these things they didn't cost much because we didn't have much.
No.
We didn't have much.
And you could, to make money, you could take your little red wagon and go down to the dock when the boats came in, and you did baggage. You took their people's stuff. And I remember my brother one time, he took somebody all the way to the ocean and she gave him an apple. That's not what he was looking for.
Well, there were other ways. They would say in the water for killies and sell them.
Yeah,
Right, right.
My brother and I used to do that.
Right? Or they would go over if you wanted to go.
We get fiddler crabs.
Uh-huh.
And we'd
Or you'd go over to the cove and dig up clams. The cove now, of course, belongs to Gateway National Park, and you wouldn't dare go walk on
we
there.
get clams, we get mussels.
And there's so many there. I did it in 2001.
But some of the things that I remember from childhood, I used to love when I was watching the fishermen on the Rockaway Point dock. Some of them would have their baskets. They'd lower in, the sides would go down, the crabs would walk in, and then they'd pull up the baskets. Children were always fascinated with things like that.
It was like a crate.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember that too.
Right.
I remember getting eels under the dock. We used to spear them under
Yeah,
the dock.
right.
Right.
Because you could sell an ear skin for $1.
But the water was so clear that you could see a horseshoe crab from the end of the dock, which was what, about 12 feet?
Right.
It was so clear you could see the horseshoe crabs down there.
Because we had a swift tide. It kept it clean.
We used to dive off the roof of the dock all the time. We'd dive off the roof of the dock and swim toward the yacht club dock. Sit there for a few minutes, take a rest, and then go back again. But when you were going back again, the current was against you, and it was, you were, it certainly didn't seem that long getting there when the current was with you, but going against the current was terrible.
And then we had the ferry boats. You would walk down to Breezy Point, get on it, and get a free ride up to Rockaway Point, just what you needed.
Exactly.
And then the kids would dive off the ferry or be in the water and have people
Throw coins,
to
yes.
them.
The Clare brothers.
Right?
Yeah, I remember
All
them.
of them.
And then the kids in Breezy would take the ferry down around in time for the movie and go to the
Right.
movie at night and then walk back home again.
Right, but,
We had wonderful times.
Yeah.
oh yeah. And then, I remember too as a kid, we had the tank on the roof because you didn't have hot water. And you'd be on the beach and everybody wanted to be the first one home to get that nice hot water from the sun. And, okay.
Hey, look at that, they're back to solar power again.
Yeah, that's true too. Right. But,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
No, but we had everything. It was sometimes a lonely life, but it was exciting because we could see stars. I've had people come down here and say, I've never seen so many stars. It's because we didn't have electricity in the winter.
And yeah,
So,
we were out
you-
all the time too.
Oh, there was a funny time too. All the firemen came up Christmas time. Everybody would have their own Christmas party. Ruth Brown played the piano. My mother played the accordion. Jimmy Dengler played the guitar. Al Lavoie played the accordion. All of these people, they would be the center of a party. Everybody sang along and had a few dances in the house. And we had a Christmas party when I was young, and all the fire department was there because my father and mother were so deeply involved in the fire department that those were their close friends. And they decided, because my mother said, I'm going to serve coffee, some of these people have to drive home. Walter, you take them and go. They were frost fishing. That's where the water is so cold that the fish actually just roll up onto the sand at the water line, and you just walk around with a bag and pick them up.
Right.
And they all went frost fishing. My mother made coffee. They were all sobering up. They were tickled pink because they had, we didn't have plastic bags in those days either. We had the grocery bags were about yay big. Every man got a grocery bag and was filling it with, they had all of these fish, they're going to eat for a week, you know, it's wonderful. They came back, and when they came back, they thought, where are we going to put these while we go have our cake and coffee? And they decided that there were too many cats on the ground, so they threw them up on the roof of the house. And when they came out after their cake and coffee, the cats were all up on the roof eating all their fish.
Right, right.
But, but there was always a way to get food around here.
And since I was only a summer resident, we had a belly stove, like in June and September, and you'd fill it up at night, and then nobody wanted to get out of the bed to put that match to it. But they were great heaters, and of course you had to walk along the beach and get all the driftwood.
Right.
But
again, that was the free stuff.
yeah,
And
right.
everybody would go running when something was on the go. You know,
Oh,
Louis' Pier is burning. Everybody goes running to Louis' Pier everybody was run to, you know, there's something going on at Market Street. Everybody be running. News traveled fast. And everybody wanted to be part of it.
Do you have any special memories at the beach? Well, these were all memories, really.
Oh, yeah. Memories at the beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, just swimming with my friends. And, you know, that's how I learned to swim. Barbara Federn's mother, Mrs. Albright,
Right.
was our swimming teacher back in the 1940s and 50s. She was the swimming teacher. And then after her was Nancy Helmriegel Rasmussen.
Nancy Helmriegel taught my children.
Right, she taught my children. But when you're here for years, you get to know, I mean, I used to babysit Nancy, so.
Right, right.
This is,
I learned to swim when my brother threw me off the dock.
Oh,
Just
wow.
I just had to swim back. Sink or swim.
right.
Yeah.
It was good times growing up here.
Yes, very good times. I wouldn't
Good
trade them for the
friends.
world.
I wouldn't,
No,
did you do
I
anything
wouldn't do
different if
No.
you look back? You didn't
No.
do anything different. Just the way it was.
It is. And people knew each other. We didn't have the TV, you didn't have a TV in every room. Now the kids go off to their room for TV. People actually got together because there was either one TV in the house if you had a TV, or if you didn't have a TV, like the summer people only brought down whatever they was left over from their winter homes. So
Right.
they didn't always have a TV. You'd sit out on the deck. And once you sat on the deck, you start talking.
To everybody.
You start singing. I mean, my mother would bring out her accordion, and it wasn't a party. 2 doors away was Ruth and Arthur Brown, and he'd take out his drum, and there'd be a party going on Graham Place.
Right.
Every summer. We did the same thing, sit and sing across the way.
And then during the war, we had the dark green shades that had to be pulled down.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Yeah, my mother had the heavy velvet shades like you use in a theater.
Oh, okay.
I don't know where she got them from, but the guy would come along, my brother and sister wanted to know what was going on out there, and they'd open the shade like this, and the guy'd come along and with his little nightstick, and he'd say, "D. Kruyff, the light's showing from your house."
My father made them with canvas.
No.
He made them. God. Good place. Good place to grow up.
Okay, can't think of anything else.
The silly things you did when we still lived on Bedford Avenue, and as I said, I was 5 years old, 7 years old when we moved out of Bedford Avenue. So we were still living on Bedford Avenue, and I remember we used to climb up into the attic and jump off the roof into the sand. First of all, children's bones are they give a lot more, but the sand was so soft. Then we had a hammock, one of those that was on a single string from each side. This is how we amused ourselves. And one kid would sit in the hammock and the hammock was made out of canvas. That's why it reminded me. The hammock was made out of canvas. You would put the canvas around you like this. You'd look like a cocoon. And then your brother or sister would spin you all around. It was better than going to Coney Island.
Yes. And two, your mother said to go outside, come home when it got dark.
We didn't have
And
to.
you always found
in a bathing
something
suit.
to do.
Right. I stayed in a bathing suit until it got dark. It was time to go home for dinner. After we ate dinner, my mother would tell me to get washed up, and I'd get out of my bathing suit and put on shorts, and I was allowed to play under the lights.
Oh, right.
Play at the corner, play Cococ Ringalivio and you know, all these old games that cost nothing, but you made friends.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's, okay, can't think of.
I think that's enough.
Yeah, I think so too.
Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Okay.
Okay, how do I shut it off?
Push that same button again.
Okay.